Hey, I'm Joe Mullican, and I want to welcome you back to Life Mentored. It is our second full episode, and I cannot wait for you to hear the story today. Today, our guest is Eric Kussin. He's the founder of hashtag Same Here Global, runs incredible things around the company, and has led just truly an amazing journey. And one of the things that I wrote down as I looked down from the story today that he was talking was walking in the first time to his psychiatrist, and then instead of saying, "Hey, what's wrong with you? Tell me about what's going on right now." All like they said, "Tell me the story of you that you've told yourself." And that's what this is about. This is that podcast where we share the stories of people who take the leap of faith, the stories of people who are going through the messy middle, the bitterness, the brokenness, the struggle, the times where we can't necessarily see the light at the tunnel, the confusion, the times where we sit and we don't understand, the disappointment, the excitement, the joys. But we do it because we've been sold a lie that our stories don't matter unless they're the most grandiose or unless we're famous. And they do. Every single one of them does. And we talk in the episode about that abundance mindset, that all of our stories matter and all of our stories have a place all the time. And so I am excited because, again, every episode, the intent is that we provide the platform and the space and the opportunity for people to feel and hear stories that help them feel a little bit more like they belong and a little bit less lonely. And so I can't wait for you to listen to this. I can't wait for you to enjoy this time. I loved spending time with a good friend, with Eric, someone who I look up to a ton in the work that he does, and can't wait for you to listen to his journey and his story as well. Because again, we want to listen to the story of ourselves the way that we've told it. And this is his story of his journey, the way that he's seen it. And so I can't wait for you to hear. And I hope today you feel a little bit less lonely, you feel a little bit more like you belong, and that you're able to hear a story from someone who sits just like you. My name's Joe Mullican, and this is Life Mentored. You know, as we kind of come in, as I think about like what this is about, is just telling stories and that idea of like we're the loneliest generation, right? Like we've been told our stories don't matter, all those different types of things. Your story has been one that has always stuck with me. So I'm super excited that you're able to jump on. But before you kind of jump into your story, just tell a little, if you can just tell everybody just a little bit about like who you are, what you do now, and all that, that would be awesome.
Yeah. So Eric Kussin, I am the founder of an organization called hashtag Same Here Global. Same Here is American Sign Language sign that you and I were the same. We formed a nonprofit back in 2018. As you'll hear the story in a little bit, but it brings together athletes, entertainers, not because some hoity-toity person who likes to mix with those people, but just because, again, as you'll hear with the story, I have a sports background, so that's who was easiest for me to reach back to, and is to be a part of this global movement of having people stories share through the lens of common emotional pain that everyone feels. And so through that nonprofit umbrella, we started building programming, you being an educator, going into schools, one, but then K through 12s, colleges, sports teams, service departments, and corporate offices, so 5 different lanes, so to speak. And from that, then ended up founding a for-profit to sit next to the brother sister. It's called 5 and 5 Inc. That's because we needed to be able to generate some revenue to put it back into the nonprofit, unless you wanted to beg for money, or, there are some nonprofits out there that are the chosen selected few by our government. And I won't get into the ridiculousness of that because I think sometimes our government with their nonprofit keeps some of the issues going. so that it helps some of the largest industries in our country as well, in our world for that matter. Um, but the messaging we can talk to when I go through the story in terms of why I think that the messaging that those nonprofits put out there. But so 5 and 5 Inc. has our app, which is Save Your Scale. So it's funny to say, like, a for-profit entity, you first have to put in a ton of money, and we're not taking investors in order to develop an app. But the app takes a lot of what we teach in the nonprofit space when we do it through programming, and it puts it in that form so that people can start going on a healing journey on their own, be educated about what mental health is, how it lives on a continuum, what exercises to do, and then finally, a part owner in the third piece of kind of this three-legged monster that sits together. It's called regional psychiatry, and regional psychiatry takes the concepts of what we teach at schools and offices in the nonprofit and put in the app, and actually uses it in a clinical setting. That way there's consistency across, as people are learning in school, learning in offices, but then they go get care. You're not lost and not knowing where to go, in the places where we are at. You're going from, oh, I learned about that, to now you're having conversation with therapist or a coach, even at a lot of these clinics, and the care that's delivered to you is common and you understand it. And it's not, whoa, these are terms that I've never heard of before.
Yeah, and I think that's awesome. I think that's one thing that we miss so often, and I love your intentionality in going about it because sometimes we muddle things up so much, right? And I talked one I know in one of the teaser episodes, and I know you and I talking like mental health to me, like it's not something on the plate. Like mental health is the damn plate. If that's broken down, everything else is. Like, I know you and I kinda texted back and forth earlier this year when, consulting stuff was all kinda falling apart for me and, stuff was changing. At that point, like, I have gallbladder, kidney stones, pneumonia, all these health things are happening at the same time, and I talk in one of the teaser episodes about MERPs, like, mental, emotional, physical, relational, spiritual, like all when we break those things apart, like when one of those things start to fall, it's going to affect everything else. And I love your intentionality that you have those connections between the two because we do have such decision fatigue, and then mentally we get that fatigue and emotionally we get that fatigue when we hear different messages or we hear it presented in sometimes not different ways but like in different paths. And I talked to a group of teachers and was just talking to them about data, and they're kind of pushing back on stuff, and I was talking to a special ed teacher, and he's talking about a kid who didn't come to school. And I was like, well, maybe the goal for him is just to come to school 5 days. He's like, yeah, but he has to do all this work. I said, yeah, but he has to come to school for 5 days to do it. So maybe that's the first goal. And
Right.
he was like, oh, and it's that step back of going like, maybe we don't set 50 goals. Maybe we stop trying to make things so damn complicated. And let's just try and make it some consistency between the two so that as people are working and trying to take these journeys of growth and do these things, that every time they actually start to see growth and do that, we're not all of a sudden going, what have you done for me lately? Right now,
Yep.
you come from the sports background, right, and coming from it, from working in highly competitive, high energy, markets. It's that idea that like, hey, you make that growth, you take that step, and all of a sudden, it's like, hey, the new thing that's there. Now you have 55 new targets to take, as opposed to what you've kind of been able to do with this, which is, hey, you work through 5 and 5 ain't cool. You want to go see somebody, they're going to talk to you in the same language that you've already worked on. You want to work on some of the stuff in school, you go to 5 and 5 Inc., then you work. Everything kind of takes that natural progression, which I think is so awesome,
Well,
and
and
has
look
the
at look.
potential to help.
I mean, your example of being talked to different ways about different things. You know, even just within mental health, generally, outside of what you just described, what we're doing, you ran it back really well. Like, you go to a single doctor, not even forgetting about, like, the system of care, going from your school psychologist to then a traditional psychologist to then potentially the hospital if you need, and they're all talking different languages. But even you go to one doctor and like, well, you've got this one thing called ADHD, and you've got this other different thing called PTSD, and then you've got this other thing called agoraphobia. And they're putting it into all these different buckets, and I'm like, no, you've got emotional pain and you're dysregulated. And your symptoms are based on the fact that genetically we're all wired a little differently. But to your point of getting the kid to come in for 5 days and making it simplified, if we can help people understand how do you regulate your nervous system and how does your nervous system live on a continuum, and you understand that language, well, then now you're not getting four different meds for four different things that they claim are all individually trying to target each one of the things that are wrong with you, and then you don't even know where to begin, you know? So the complexity of what they're attempting to do, unfortunately, I know all too well, you become a dog chasing your tail, and then you end up in a worse spot.
Yeah, for sure. Well, hey, I know that, when we talked a few years ago, I know you shared this story a number of times. So, but I want to give you some space now to kind of talk about, where you got to where you got now, like the genesis of getting there. Because I know that when you left, college, when you started your career and you got into things, this wasn't the end goal, right? Which one, I think that's the beautiful thing of life. I live with zero regrets. I've got a semicolon tattooed on my thumb. One, for the standard reason why it's there, because there have been times where I've been close. But two, because I think the semicolon in life represents the fact that, like, we have constant, different iterations of what we do, and of the same story. So I want to give you some space now just to kind of tell the story of Eric Kussin, and to be able to share that out, because I know for me, I sat on more than one occasion with your words resonating in my mind, in a chair, feeling alone, um, feeling kind of lost, and I know that this is going to be one that resonates with a ton of people.
Thank you, man. And first off, thanks for sharing that it made you not feel alone. And as I share this, I want people to know that I did feel alone when I went through what I went through, because it wasn't talked about. Still don't think it's talked about in this way. And and I think we need to openly talk about these things because they're so common. It's just what being human is. Um, so I'll start with, you mentioned not expecting to be in the space, right? Like when I
Yeah.
was an athlete growing up, like 6'4", I can play a bunch of different sports. I don't mean that like in a myself in a bad way, just meaning like I was a competitive guy who like was fortunate enough to be, in high school, 6'4" is pretty big, not when you get to college. But
Yeah.
was able to play football and soccer in the same season, and basketball and lacrosse, and was pitching in baseball even back in the day. Like I played ice hockey, like I any sport I could get my hands on it, I played. So then I went to college and I walked on at Cornell to the basketball team, and so kept like my competitive juices going. And then when I graduated college, or upon graduation, I applied 4 places: the Major League Baseball, NFL, NHL, and NFL. And most people don't share their rejections. I think it's an important piece. I got 3 rejection letters right away, but the NBA, for whatever reason, gave me an opportunity for a phone interview, and that led to 8 phone interviews from October of my senior year until March of my senior year. And the guy who's now the deputy commissioner of the NBA, Mark Tatum, he was the director of marketing properties at the time, and we hit it off, and he hired me. So I came into the NBA league office like super excited, couldn't wait for my career to get started. So went from the NBA league office where for 5 years I was running a program called the Business of Basketball, and talk about a dream job. It was to go to the teams, to present to the players and to the general managers, so all the front office folks, how revenues are generated. And we take for granted that players are making many, many $1 million a year right now. But back then, average salary, still compared to the average American was high, but significantly lower than what it is right now. And so my job is to explain how season ticket holders contribute to the revenue, how corporate partners contribute, how media rights contribute, so that they understood that that's this thing called basketball related income, and that their salary cap is always a percentage of basketball related income. So the more the pie grows, the more their slice of the pie grows, right? And so it motivated them to interact more with the stakeholders as opposed to just I get paid to play basketball, right? And at the time, the guys who were in the league who had just come in, for me, it was, Amari Stoudemire with the Suns. It was Kevin Garnett with the Minnesota Timberwolves. It was LeBron James with the Cleveland Cavaliers. It was Kobe Bryant with the Lakers. It was all guys who had come out of high school, and they didn't have business classes in college to be taught these things, and there were not player development directors who handheld them through these things. So it's really unique opportunity. I
Yeah.
won't go into as much detail in the other, positions. Um, that one was specific just because, to your point, you don't expect to be here now. Yeah, here I am. I got this awesome career, right? Then I go out to Chicago and I helped start up a WNBA team, the Chicago Sky, which was first independently owned women's team outside of NBA ownership. Amazing run there for 2 years. The Suns end up calling, ironically, when I mentioned Amari before, uh, and I go work for the Suns as their director of group sales. So now I'm overseeing the Suns, the Mercury, which is their WNBA team, and then something that's called AES, which is all of their arena events. So, everything from Disney on Ice to circus to what have you. So any ticket that comes in the building is, that's what we're responsible for. Eventually, after 3 years there, again, amazing run, I get called by New Jersey to come run sales and service. So VP of sales and service for the New Jersey Devils. Have an amazing run there. We make it to the Stanley Cup final in 2012. Sucks to not win it when you go that far, but got the game
Who'd you
six,
guys lose
lost
to that year?
the Jonathan Quick led LA Kings, unfortunately.
Oh,
So
okay, that's right. I was gonna say I
we
couldn't
were
remember if that was one of the years the Blackhawks beat you guys or
no,
or,
so
or won.
we
So
yeah, they went on a run also, but this was we were the sixth seed, the Kings were the eighth seed. So it's very, hockey that can happen. We're the bottom seeds. So we were always the road team for the first three series, and like they were contentious series against Florida, Philadelphia, huge rival, Rangers, biggest rival, Eastern Conference Finals. We win in Game 6 at home. Everyone's going crazy. We finally have our first two games are at home in the finals. And we lose both games in OT um, at home. So we go into the game down 0-2. Then I fly out to LA. We lose game 3. So we're in a 3-game-0 hole. We brought it back to game 6, which was fun, but then unfortunately ended up losing. A double minor. So they played 5-on-3 at the beginning of game 6, and it was just over from there. So then eventually I get called by the Florida Panthers, and I go down to what's my most recent position in sports to be their chief revenue officer, which, in the hierarchy of how things are set up in the sports world and the business side. So there was a new ownership group that purchased a team. That's the same group that now owns the team that just won the Stanley Cup final.
yeah.
So I feel good that I had picked going to the right organization. They are military-led group, Vinny Viola, self-made billionaire, came from tenement houses and worked his whole way up. Had been a West Point grad. So he hires a team president who has no sports background, about my age, but he wanted someone that, he's one of those military trust military guys. He hired a military guy who had worked for Goldman Sachs, a guy named Matt Colwell, who's still there, great guy. And then I get hired kind of as the number 2, but I'm the only one with any kind of sports background starting this organization. Matt had very much a structure background and management background. So for me, think about situationally, and this is, when we talk about mental health, I think people will be able to appreciate this is from a situational perspective in that moment in time. Not talking about the past, not talking about visions of what I'm going to do down the road. In that moment in time, I'm single, 34, living in South Beach, making more money than I'd ever made before in my life. Have a nice car because we have a deal with Lexus to be able to get like good deal on a lease. I'm a guy who grew up with like Oldsmobiles and roll up windows. Not that I'm deprived, but giving like some context. Um, nice new apartment renting, just middle of Las Olas Boulevard. Everything I could ask for was in place, right? And I'm being given the
Hmm.
keys because I'm the only one with sports experience at that level to essentially build the culture of this organization from the ground up. And that was great for the first 6 months. We're hiring people, we're setting up culture in the office, and again, not making it punitive like what you were talking about with the schools, and rewarding people and making more about education. And so I'm 6 months into my time there, and then all of a sudden I just start to lose interest in everything outside of the office. And I don't know what that means, other than I'm thinking, oh, this must be the world's way of telling me that I need to focus even more on what I'm doing in the office. That's got to be why I don't have interest in seeing friends. I don't have interest in working out. I don't have interest in going to other games of Miami Heat or what have you. And so for about a 2 week span, I would get in the office at 7:30 instead of 8. I would leave at 11 at night instead of 10 at night. I just was elongating the amount of time I was spending towards work, because work was the only thing where my brain was functioning and I was getting that, dopamine hit, which, it simplifying the equation there, but some kind of motivation to do something. And
And I think
eventually I
that's
work.
why, like,
Yeah,
that's one of the reasons I talk too about. I know you're going to talk about it. One of the reasons that I like kind of lambast that grind culture, that like, hey, get up and go work, go do your like, go, 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 is because of what you're going to talk about next. That it's like that elongation of that
yep.
isn't treating the root cause. That
Well,
elongation of that is
eh,
just, helping to maybe, I watched Deepwater Horizon not too long ago, but all that's doing is just kind of putting a little bit longer of a cap on everything before it blows.
and the reason for that is because we find purpose and meaning in what our job is. So the grind is easier. When I say all the other things started to go away, it's because that should have represented that there was an issue, of now things that I understand. My reward centers were getting blunted, and, an inability to feel any kind of up or high related to anything else. So if your work is automatic and you come in every single day and you do it, and that's your identity and your purpose, well, that's the last little piece that you're able to hold on to and grip really hard,
For
because
sure.
you need something, because you feel like you're floating away without everything else. And so, yeah, unfortunately, I got caught in that treadmill, if you will, of, okay, at least stay on that because that's working and that'll keep me moving. And I ended up waking up one morning, and it was like pushing myself out of quicksand to get out of bed. I felt like I had cinder blocks on my feet walking into my closet. I opened my closet door. It feels like a bomb has gone off. I can't make out whether or not I should, wear a t-shirt. Should I wear a button down? Should I wear a suit? I kind of come to and remember that I have got a presentation I got to give that night. We have a game. Okay, I got to take my suit with me. I definitely did not shower that day. I didn't even brush my teeth. Like, that's how bad it was. It's like, and back to like grind work culture. Okay, if I can get into the office somehow and like get behind the wheel and push myself into the office, and everything's going to fall into place. And I remember sitting in my office, and I like being interactive. I like people coming in. I like doing educational sessions. My staff would always give me a hard time at every place I was. You love having meetings. You love talking about stuff. Like, yeah, it's fun, being in a group setting. Well, that day I'm behind my door, and I'm like, yeah, I can't. People are coming in. Hey, I'm on the phone. And that night, I was supposed to give a presentation to 50 prospects in a prospecting suite. So we challenged our reps to each bring 2 prospects. So we challenged 25 of them to get 50 in this suite. And so, what my job as chief revenue officer is, you're like the chief cheerleader. You got to talk about the excitement of, the direction that the team's going in, to help your reps sell whatever they're trying to sell, whether it's a season ticket package, whether it's a sponsorship package. So now looking back on it now, many years later, this was beginning of 2015. So I can recall very easily We had a Hall of Fame goaltender in Roberto Luongo. We had just drafted Jonathan Huberdeau and Alexander Barkov, who were the faces of our franchise. Aaron Ekblad was a future, top defensive player of the year candidate. Um, we had Vinny Viola, the owner, who was finally spending money in Florida, a market that was always talked about as it's not a great sports market, and it's not a great, hockey market specifically. It's market in the South. Well, he was dedicated to putting the money in to make sure there's great relationships with the community. Like I had all these talking points that should be able to flow out of my mouth.
Right.
And instead, the only thing I could think of, and I wrote it down on an index card, was, "Hi, my name is Eric Kussin. I'm the chief revenue officer with the Panthers. It's great to meet you." That's it. Like that one line. And still, because I'm a stubborn SOB and back to like meaning and purpose and
Yeah.
I literally, everyone comes in the suite and I'm not saying hello to anyone, I'm like looking down at the card. I read that first line, and when I'm done, it feels like a light switch went off in my brain, completely black. And I just go, "This is Vinny, our team owner. He's going to take it from here." And I walk out and I go back to my office. And when the game was over, I don't even remember what happened between that first period break and the end. I just sitting in my office staring at the wall, basically. And he comes in, he's like, "I can tell something's up." Matt, our team president, was there too. They were super supportive, and they were like, "Tell us what you need. We could tell something's up, but not calling you out, more in a supportive way." I said, "I don't know what's wrong with my brain. I don't know if I have a brain tumor. I don't know if I had traumatic brain injury as a kid playing sports, and now it's just manifesting." I even like threw out, "Did I have an aneurysm? And it's just actively in my brain right now, exploding things. Is it this mental health thing?" But again, who knows what mental health is at this point? So like,
Right.
what mental illness within mental health do I have? So, I at that point, they said to me something very supportive. Is Vinny specifically said, "Whatever you need to do, we love what's getting built here. Take as much time as you need, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. You'll come back, at the ground running." So, okay, 3 months I hear in my head as he's rolling this off, which for him was probably just a throwaway line, albeit supportive. Not like he specifically was like, "Oh, 3 months is your cutoff point," but that's what I heard. And so my thought was, this is what we think when we grow up in the Northeast. All the top doctors are in the Northeast. All the, Ivy League trained Harvard and Columbia and Brown and Cornell trained doctors are up in the Northeast. So, okay, that's where my family is. I still got my bed from growing up as a kid, albeit it's a twin bed. It's still a bed for me. And I'll come back to New York and I'll get better there. That was my plan. And the reality was I ended up spending 2.5 years just laying in a bed, dead to the world. I know that's a triggering word for people, but like I was a zombie. I did not leave the house other than going to the doctor. I did not get a haircut. If interesting pictures of my hair that you'll find it funny with the kids in school. I show them the picture of my hair, and I'm like, "Yeah, but that's the style that you all have right now, anyway. That's like the cool
Right.
style."
Right. Right.
Not that for yeah, so you don't think there's anything weird about that, but yeah, my hair was growing out like all different places, and um, my brain was not functioning. I was waking up every morning with what I call no original thoughts. So we take for granted when we wake up every morning that our brain goes, "Oh, I'm hungry," or my mouth tastes gross. I want to brush my teeth, or I didn't answer the email from came in last night. I better pick up my phone. Or even if we want to get into some of the bad stuff, like I want to check social media because I want to see what happened overnight while I wasn't on, and nothing, no desire at all. So I would wake up just staring at the ceiling, looking at the paint chips, and going, "Why am I still feeling this way? Why am I still feeling this way? Why am I still feeling this way?" And I was doing all the things that the doctors were telling me to do. Okay. Which was, here's a medication that fixes this chemical imbalance based on this name of whatever the chemical imbalance is that you have. And every new doctor that I went to that had a different evaluation thought it was sort of melancholic depression, anhedonic depression, PTSD, OCD, ADHD, back to the complexities of different languages that they all speak.
Well, and I can remember too, like, especially with the medication part with it, at least for me, like when I had COVID, I had encephalitis, and I'm coming back off of that, and I'm trying to like, what and that is, to a certain degree a traumatic brain injury, but like I've in the course of, I think it was like September 21 to August of 22, I ran through the entire family of different bipolar and mood stabilizing medicines. And I wonder why, like, I was not in a right place for a bit after that. Like, all that stuff carries an impact to it. And changing
There's no
meds and doing all those, like, all those different things. And it's those points too where, like, I don't know if you felt this way, but I know I certainly did. And I'm sure other people have as well, is when those things don't work and you still feel the same way, there's that feeling and that voice in your back of your head that goes like, am I am I faking this? Like, is this real? Like, am I crazy right now?
yeah.
Or like what's going on? And so,
Well, like, and
yeah,
it could swing to either end of the spectrum. It could either be, am I crazy and I'm making this up? And then the other part of it goes, am I so messed up that
nothing.
all the top medicines don't work for me? Like, I'm what they the term which bothered the shit out of me is you're treatment resistant, right? It's like, oh, I mean, your treatment, which you think is the only treatment that's out there.
Yeah.
But I didn't know at the time because when there's 52 different medications to try, which is what I was tried on in 2.5 years, and there's obviously more than that, but that was my you think you're the most messed up person because you're like, I'm doing everything they're telling me. And again, even with zero motivation, I'm doing all the other things. I'm going to quote talk therapy. They say the gold standard is talk therapy and med management. Well, I'm sitting across a chair from someone once a week, and they're getting frustrated at me because there's nothing coming out of my brain. Like they're asking me questions. I'm like, yeah, yeah. Like they're asking open-ended questions, and I'm making myself walk up and down the stairs in my house to get some kind of cardiovascular movement going. Like then getting in the shower and being like having thoughts in my head of like, well, if I stay in the shower and the door is locked and I have no reason to leave the shower, like I could die in the shower. Like that was the weird shit that was going through my head, meaning that there's nothing else going on in my world. So what's right? I knew I didn't want to hurt myself, but at the same time, it's not like my brain was going, oh, now you've been in the shower too long, but now you're in the mood to watch TV instead of be in the shower. And that was not coming into my brain. My brain was just so that's how bad it was. And to your point about the buildup of what these things do to us, you take, in my case, 52, but in anyone's case, you take a lot of these meds, doesn't matter what the number is. There's metals, there's toxicity, there's all these, the body holds on, and I'm going through a lot of cellular detox things right now. We can get to that. But like at the time, you're just like, give me whatever you need to get me better. And you think that you're doing all the right things because so we're sold med management and talk therapy are the gold standards. And when there's that many meds to try, you think that you're the issue because you just need to keep trying new ones. So eventually a doctor
And
tells me to do, yeah, you can say
yeah,
something.
and say, and in a time where we feel lonely or we feel like, what we're like, there's a big thing right now talking about moral injury that's kind of rolling through a lot of stuff right now, like in Forbes, and rolling out with different, and it talks about just the fact that like in PTSD, like a lot of times people look back and go like, I'm the issue. They have a hard time ever having other people take ownership or seeing other people take ownership. So in those times it comes back to you, right? And so in any of these instances, right, I know like for me, for you, and what it sounds like for you, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's that, the idea that like when we're sitting there in trying to like get through and figure this stuff out, we then turn back to us and go, well, I must still be the issue then, right? I still must not be enough. I still must not be, it must be an issue with me, not with something that's holistic around
Well,
me.
and I keep in mind, this you know the rest of my story, so you're foreshadowing as you say that. I have no idea at this point that what I'm going through may be related to things that happen in my life. Okay. So I think I just have a mental illness, as they call it, that's based on a chemical imbalance. that came out of nowhere that I went from functioning to not functioning. So then in that thought process, I'm like, well, in this imbalance where they have to balance out the imbalance, my brain is so imbalanced from whatever illness that I have, I can't get better. Right. That's my thought process. I'm not even thinking about events around me and how that can contribute. And so, and I think unfortunately a lot of people get sick. That's the first thing that happens with them. They're like, oh, you now have it. What is the it? Okay, whatever label is that the doctor gives you, right? So, you try 52 of them, eventually you get frustrated and the doctors can hear it in your voice. So the next line of defense is this doctor tells me to do something called TMS therapy, which is transcranial magnetic stimulation. So they put a helmet on your head and they shoot electromagnetic waves into your brain. To simplify it for people to understand it, if the medication is the software, okay, what neurotransmitters are getting processed in your brain, then the TMS is trying to work on the hardware. The issue must not be the software anymore because that hasn't worked. The issue is the way that the hardware, the neurons, are firing the software. We got to get the neurons firing the right way. So they start to zap the neurons to get them to excite and wake up. And so I do 23 sessions of that, 23 days in a row. And I wake up on the morning of the 24th, and it's 4, excuse me, 4 in the morning. And I'm sitting like this. So they kind of, it's hard when you got Zoom, you can't see all the way down. But so I'm sitting like this and my knees are shaking. And they're shaking because I'm staring at a bottle of pills. It's a full bottle of pills that I just had filled. And my brain is having this message go through it, swallow the bottle, swallow the bottle, swallow the bottle, swallow the bottle, over and over and over again. And the reason I'm sitting on my hands is because I don't want to swallow that bottle. So, like, how is it possible that my body, which I think I'm in control of up until this point, now feels like I don't have control of it, that this error message is what I call it, is compelling me in this magnetic pull type of way to go towards a bottle and swallow the whole thing. I'd never looked at a bottle of pills as something that could hurt me before. Why is it now that I'm seeing this bottle in this way? And for people who have not experienced an ideation before, I share this because we're all susceptible to them. So one is I want you to know what people who have experienced them are going through. You can help them. Two, if you're ever to have them, if you know what to expect, it won't feel as overwhelming as it does to most people. But most people aren't willing to talk about this openly. I'm not patting myself on the back for that. I'm saying we got to motivate more people to do it. That's why I do it. Is it feels
Well,
like there's
and
two rest. Yeah,
I was say, and transparently, like there's 2 of us on that call that have had that, right? Like I cannot. There's been a number of things that have triggered it, but like for me, it's A Star Is Born, the movie. Like I can never ever watch that movie again. And I know that like there's been a time where I've ordered that movie on Prime Video and then had to make a phone call because I knew that if I watched that video again, I wasn't sure what was going to happen because I identify like strongly
yeah,
with
that's right.
the one, right? And there's been times where I've had to pour pills down. There's been times where I check myself into the hospital and um yeah, it's one of those things that when you hear friends talk about it, you hear other people talk about it, that's like the first time how scary that can be. It's terrifying. And it's a little less terrifying when it's something that's kind of there all the time, and kind of sits in the background, right? But um again, like you said, no, I want to turn it back over to you, but it's one of those things that we're like, we don't talk about it. And I want to make sure people that listen know like this, every episode's not, necessarily, talking about like the deepest struggles, but um, everybody has something that they're coming from, right? Everybody has that story. Everybody has that place that they come from that's tough in those times. And especially in those moments, I don't know for you, but like when I get to those moments, it's like I can't even picture 3 months from now, let
Uh,
alone 3 years from now, 6 years, all these like it's the like I there's been times where like I'm finishing up a divorce or like I'm thinking about my kids graduate, I'm thinking about next jobs, I'm thinking about and I'm like, I don't know, I don't care. Like, I'm probably not gonna see it anyway, so who cares? Whatever, right? Like, and it's those moments where like you get into that place where it's like, whatever, because you can't picture that. And I mean, I don't think people always recognize that idea of like not being able to picture the
yeah,
future
yeah,
because of the fact that you can't picture the rest of today, let
yeah.
alone. s-
Well, I think. it's interesting because the ideations and then the ability to picture the future oftentimes can go together, but I think they're separate things, right? So not being able to, you have no reward center when your mental health starts to decline. When you have no reward center, you have no ability to hold on to images that say, I want to do this. So like a healthy brain goes, today I want to go for a walk and I want to take my dog out and it's sunny. And then 2 weeks from now, um, I think, that my kid having the play that I'm gonna go watch because they've been, practicing for it, I'm gonna go and cheer them on, and then 3 months from now, I'm excited because a vacation's coming up. You cannot hold that hierarchy and structure in your brain when your mental health declines. Metabolically, your body doesn't have the energy to process all that information, and then the ability to have these dopamine hit reward centers that picture it. So for people who've never experienced it before, it looks like you're staring at a black wall in front of you. You
Yeah.
can't see beyond that. And so now you combine that with the ideations, so your brain's telling you to do something that you know you don't wanna do, and I appreciate that you openly share that you at the pour not your bottle of pill before, because for people who've not experienced the ideations, it's a magnetic pull towards self-harm. So I was, making this motion before because it's two wrestlers in your head. And wrestler number one is Kurt Angle and is an Olympic trained, just
Yeah.
behemoth. And that's the ideation of, the thought telling you to do something yourself. And then you and your rational thinking part of your brain, you're a novice who's never been trained by a coach before, who's getting in the ring with that wrestler. And you have to try to figure out a way to at least stay alive, to not get pinned and destroyed by this person.
Right.
And at that point, the only thing that you can do is reach out to other people or reach out to the hospital or whatever and say, I need help. There's no way I could beat Kurt Angle right now. It's too strong. But that's where we lose people to suicide because we don't have this open conversation. Most people that we lose to suicide or that suicide attempted and then didn't die, they'll say to you, I didn't want that to be my reality. I couldn't stop myself. Right. Well,
Yeah.
if that's what we are hearing in most cases, and it's not a letter that someone wrote, right? Because there are cases we have to acknowledge that some cases of suicide are choice, but it's not the majority. The majority is an overwhelm of our system. And so why are we not getting in front of this and talking about it in a first person perspective like this? Instead, it's like, hey, Joe, we're having a suicide speaker at the school today. And then the person comes up and they go, this is what to look out for in other people. Are they giving away possessions? Have they made a list or a plan? You're like, how about talking to the person about what they may feel, not what to look at in other people? That's
Well, and I
the
think
way that we're gonna say.
it's the idea too that, like, I'll talk to people about, wellness. I'll talk to them about and what I try not to do ever is prescribe like, "Hey, do this, 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 and this," because 'Cause I'm like you, right? Like, I'm 6'5", 280. Like, if I go to the gym, I'm one of the biggest guys that's gonna walk into the YMCA to go lift. People will say, like, "Hey, if you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling down, if you're feeling low, like, go work out, go do these things." You know what's gonna make me as a former athlete feel even more insecure and down? Like, going to the gym and lifting the least amount of weight of all the dudes that are there, right? So, like, that's not my brand. For some people, it's not meditate, and so it's finding your own brand in some of those things. And then, like, one of the things, and I'd love to get your feedback on this, that I challenge people to do when I kinda work and talk with them is, I call it a get out of jail free, you know, your get out of jail list, right? Like, who are those people that you would call that would come bail you out of jail? And I challenge people to write that list down, like list of 5 to 10 people, and then put a note that has their actual number. Write it out because that's something we've all forgotten how to do. Like, we used to learn that as kids, right? Our
Yeah.
address, phone numbers for everybody, but now it's like I don't know what, like, I don't know what my parents' phone number is. I barely know what their address is. And I don't know that I could tell, like, I know they live on Onstead Highway in Michigan, but, like, or I don't even think it's that. They live in Onstead on Gilbert Highway in Michigan. But, like, I don't know those things. I don't know how I get around without, but I challenge people, like, connection doesn't happen by accident. So if you find yourself in that place where you are struggling, where you are doing those things, if you aren't consistently reaching out to people, those connections don't happen by accident, and then you're less likely to reach out when you get to that point of crisis. And so I just challenge people like, hey, Don't let anyone on that list go 2 weeks without you reaching out, whether it's a text, an email, a phone call, a message on social media, whatever it is. Connect at least every 2 weeks so that when or if you get to that point where you are low, where you are feeling that struggle, that you've gotten into the habit of making that connection, because those things don't happen on accident, right? Like
Yeah.
at least for me, when I'm feeling at that point, like I know I've got a handful. You're one of them that I'll send a text to. There's some other people out there, but like it doesn't happen by accident when we get to those points and we're low to reach out. We've been conditioned to say like, don't talk about this.
Right.
You're
Yeah,
a
that's a great
burden.
that's great. But I mean, I was lucky because I was living with my parents at the time, and so they saw the struggle firsthand. Not everyone has a relationship with their parents. Not everyone still has their parents. Not everyone has their family, like if it's not their parents. And so, or isn't living with those people at the time where you can just pick up the phone and do that. And on top of that, what I would say is like, I'm not the biggest fan of a psych ward in the hospital, but if you don't have someone around you in that list that's picking up, there's no shame in going, those people at least will watch me and make sure that I don't do anything to myself. And I just need that cooling off period until eventually I get out of this state that I'm in right now. This is a temporary state, right? And so there's no shame in that. If you broke your ankle or what happened with you with, going to the ER or wherever it was, or the and going, hey, kidney stones, kidney stones, kidney stones. You have to be the doctor because you're in that much pain. They have to help you. It should be no different. Your brain is in pain. Go to the freaking hospital and get them to help you, right? So anyway, I get the TMS therapy. I have those ideations. I go in inpatient. There's my buddy behind me, Oakley, making an appearance. And eventually go to the psych ward at Cornell Med, and there's a Harvard trained doctor. So you're seeing a consistent theme here of all these supposedly top doctors. I don't mean that in a derogatory way. It's just like, this is who we're told are the best people. And okay, well, she looks at my chart, looks at the 52 meds, the TMS therapy, and she says, your last resort is to do ECT. Okay, ECT is electroconvulsive therapy or shock therapy.
Yeah.
Getting your brain shocked into seizure. And I have to be careful. It's funny. I got a talk coming up at University of Louisville Hospital on Tuesday of this week. And I'm going to be speaking to doctors who use ECT. So I can't be derogatory towards ECT. Like it seems archaic and barbaric that your brain gets shocked into seizure and you're under general anesthesia, but it works for some people, right? In my case, it didn't work. But the bigger issue with how the hospital treated me was that because I tried the meds, because I tried the TMS, for them to say last resort is ridiculous. Like that was not even near my last resort. But at the time, I believed them because they're a top doctor and because it's
Right.
a top facility. So I'm going to do what they tell me to do. To your point about that, you feel comfortable calling me. In 2017, no one was talking about this shit. So I couldn't call up Joe and be like, hey, when you had ECT treatments, or did you ever get ECT treatments? So you're listening to what the doctor's saying. And I get my brain shocked with the seizure, 12 times over 5 weeks, inpatient there. And I leave the hospital no better than I had the previous 2.5 years, essentially believing my life is over unless Merck or Pfizer invents some miracle pill that pops me out of this. Again, because medication is the only path if these other things haven't worked. And again, like it's humiliating to yourself, I don't care about other people in just a downtrodden way to be like, you've tried everything and nothing worked for you. Your brain is that messed up. And so where the story flips is my parents are both, educators like you are. And so mother was a language teacher, father was a principal. And so they would go to these continuing education courses all the time. And so they went to this one course that was called integrative breathing practices. And I didn't know what the term integrative meant. So I didn't think much of it. And breathing, I already breathe every single day. So what do I need to learn about breathing for? Um, so my mom runs back from the course that night. She's like, the only way she knew how to describe me was anxiety and depression. Like I went up to the doctor after and I asked her if she works with people who have anxiety and depression. Like, the way that she was helping us breathe, I can't explain it, but she treats differently than all these other doctors you've been to. Please go see her. Please go see her. So 3 days later, I find myself on her couch, and the approach to her, I was having this debate with our chief medical officer, because he's like, "Do you really think your appointment with her was so different than other doctors?" I was like, "Yes," because here's why. Doesn't matter, psychologist or psychiatrist, most of the appointments, when you first get to know them, they go, "So nice to meet you, Joe. Tell me what you're coming in for. What are your symptoms?" Right? So immediately they go into what's wrong. And even if they don't say it that way, they'll say, "Tell me about what's going on in your life." It's so it begins with what's wrong, right? And
Right.
then from what's wrong, then the next segment goes, "Here's what I think you have." That's what they're trained to do, to put you into a diagnosis label. And then the third segment of it is, based on what you have, here's how we treat what you have. And she didn't do that at all. Now, this may have been where she was going to get to. And so this was her way of asking in a different way, but it didn't come off that way to me. She goes, "Eric, I just want to get to know you as a person. So I have one question for you for the next hour. What's the story of your life as you tell it to yourself?" And that's an interesting way to be asked that question. Tell it to yourself, because you're thinking anyone else could have seen my life from the outside and watched it. She's asking me to talk about how I experienced it and what story I'm telling myself. And so, again, not starting with the negatives, you go to your earliest memory, getting a certain toy at 4 years old, and you like playing with it. And then eventually I get up to 9 years old. And now my older brother, he's 4 years older than me, and my little brother, he's 6 years younger than me. My older brother breaks his femur bone. Okay, put into traction and then a body cast for a year. Had to be homeschooled because casts back then, you can't move in the cast the way they have it.
Right.
Heals from that, goes back to school, and gets diagnosed with ALL, a children's form of leukemia. So 5 years of chemo and radiation in the late 80s, early 90s, which back then was not the best prognosis. But miracle, after 5 years, he goes into remission, everyone celebrated. A month later, he's in a Jeep Wrangler with his friends, open top, no seatbelt, car loses control and flies out of the back, lands on his head on the parkway, cracks his orbital bone, loses partial vision in his eye, in ICU for a month. Heals from that, goes to college, feeling a pain in his knee. Same cancer from childhood's come back, and now that's come back, they have to give him a stronger dose of the chemo, which fortunately the chemo drugs are stronger 10 years later. They need to give him a stronger dose. But in it being stronger, it's beating up some of his healthy cells as well. That's why we see people lose their hair. And I get a call. I'm up at Cornell at this point. My father, "Hey, come back downstate to meet us at the hospital. Pod's got 105 fever." So we get to the hospital, and the neurologist tell us his body's gone into septic shock from the chemo treatments. Septic shock, he's fallen into a coma, and you all can make a decision for the keep the tube breathing for him. But full disclosure, we can't promise anything, and we don't know what the end result is going to be. Is he ever going to come out of this? Is he ever going to have any ability to think, to talk, to react with us? So that goes on 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. I'm driving back and forth between college. Eventually, 3 months, he wakes up, miracle again, full cognitive faculty. So everyone celebrated. One part of the story I don't tell, he's in his hospital bed, and he's watching the Jeffersons with my dad, and he starts acting as if he's one of the characters in the show. So they could tell, like, okay, his cognitive faculties are back, but that seemed a little off. Well, fluid had formed in his brain from him laying septic shock for so long. They had to do a procedure where they put a shunt in your brain to drain
Yeah.
the fluid out of your stomach. So then he's dealt with blood clots and stuff like that. But okay, the very, intense part of his journey at that point seems to be coming to an end. I get the job right out of college at the NBA, thinking, okay, blank slate, real world, put this all behind me. By the way, I didn't share that his kidneys failed, and my dad had to donate a kidney to him, so that was successful. But now all of a sudden, I'm at the NBA, and the first 3 years there, three of my close friends that I grew up with, 22, 23, 24 years of age, passed away back to back to back. So at this point in the conversation, which is 50 minutes into an hour long session, Donna, the psychologist, she stops me. She's like, Okay, what else happened to you as a child and a young adult that I need to know about that impacted your mental health? And I said, I don't know what you're talking about impacted by mental health. This is when you were asking me about like things going on I don't know what the hell she's talking about at this point. I said, Donna, you asked me to tell you about my life. I thought I was just getting to know you. I started at age 4. I got up to 24. My crash of my chemical imbalance happened at 33. So that was 9 or 10 year difference where I was running sales for the Suns, the Devils, and the Panthers. My mental health was fine. I don't know what you're talking about. And so this is where she takes a deep breath and she says, if you had it, your job as an NBA executive and you were wearing a nice suit and these 7 foot athletes are running up and down the court as you're sitting in a front row seat entertaining clients and the sweat flies off them and hits you, or they land for a loose ball and land in your lap and your suit gets all sweaty, you're going to go home after a 3 hour basketball game, put your suit away for the dry cleaner, take a shower, come on in a nice new suit the next day. Said you had a front row seat, but it wasn't for an NBA basketball game, it was for the game of life. And the game of life is represented by a muddy wrestling ring your brother was in, and other muddy wrestling rings your friends were in, and you had that same front row seat. And it's not that you didn't know the wrestling matches were happening, it's that you were focused on everything else in the arena, the jumbotron and the LED lights and the music, which now I came to find out what she meant was my working in sports, my playing sports, my interest in fun and going out and meeting people. And
Yeah.
I was so not focused on how the mud was splattering and hitting me from that front row seat. And that mud that was splattering and hitting me and kicking up on me, you know, like it hit me when she goes, you didn't just sit there for 3 hours like an NBA game or 3 days or 3 weeks or 3 months or 3 years or 30 years. For 33 years, you've been sitting in the same seat. That mud is called stress and trauma. And that makes physiological and biological changes to your nervous system. And you need to figure out ways to scrub the mud off, which means healing those affected parts of your body that have built up over time. And, when she explained that to me, instead of going, "Oh, okay, how do I do that?" I just got upset. I go, that makes sense for me, but that doesn't make sense for the rest of society. It's like, what do you mean? So I was like, well, if watching things happen to other people in our lives from a front row seat impacts our mental health, then take me out of the equation at 35, take your average 15-year-old. Watch your parents get into fights and get a divorce. Watch your parents lose their job and lose the house. Watching your two best friends get in a fight and never speak to each other again, and you're caught in the middle. Watching your friend being bullied on the schoolyard or verbally abused, or them confiding in you that they were sexually abused, or your friend dealing with a sickness of a loved one like my friend saw me, or watching a friend deal with the loss of a loved one at a young age, or watching your own parent deal with their sick older parent. Like the list, I could keep going on, but I was like, if that's what mental health is, that's not what most people think mental health is related to. They think mental health is I have it or I don't, and I have this illness and it's genetic. So if I had known that this is what it was, I would have been working on myself this whole time.
Right.
What do you mean, right? And so, you know, to land the plane on the whole story is that like I started healing by going to breathing classes at first and learning about these kriyas, what they call it. And okay, the vagus nerve is one structure in the body that if I'm intensely upset about something or worried about something because my brother's sick, my brother's sick, my brother's sick, how am I breathing and how's it changing? Well, I'm sending signals down that vagus nerve to the rest of my body,
Yep.
threat position, something might happen, something might happen. And that's a natural place for us to be in, but it's not healthy. Natural is different than healthy, meaning my brain is going to a spot of thinking worst case scenario to brace itself just in case. Well, in that scenario, my brain is then saying you're in worst case scenario so that if it happens, you're not going to get destroyed. Well, I'm destroying myself slowly as I'm staying in that place anyway.
Right. Right.
And so the breathing, was the first path towards helping me and now starting to get my brain back online. Oh, this breathing things work. And then I start going and I'm like, I go out to Jakarta, Indonesia to learn about Qigong meditation. I go to Arizona to this guy, David Berselli, to learn about tension trauma releasing exercises. And my brain sees things in pictures. So when it's working, um, so I see the gym for your physical health is there's many pieces of equipment to get your body in shape. Why are there not many pieces of equipment to get your brain in shape? Why am I told med management and talk therapy? I guess because I was sold on the different pieces of equipment are different meds. But I'm learning about all these other modalities that heal the affected parts of my body that connect my brain and my body together. And so I'm thinking to myself, I got relationships with athletes. I wasn't going to start a nonprofit organization. I was going to gift those relationships that I had with athletes to whatever organization that was talking about it in the way that I just came to understand it. That was in 2017. It's now 2025, and there's still not a large organization talking about it the way that I'm describing to you. Back to, you could make decisions on why these things are the way they are. A lot of them are government funded. Who does the government work with? Pharmaceutical industries. Okay. Is this done intentionally? I have no idea. Right? I want to believe the best intentions. I don't know. But I could only go to so many of these websites and see the same messages. And those same messages, there's three of them. The first is 1 in 5 people are mentally ill. Okay, you can claim that that's a normalization message to say, well, it's 20% of people. You should check on their mental health. It's a terrible message for normalization because it tells 80%, 4
Yeah.
in 5 people, you're healthy, you're fine, you're okay. Don't
Right.
do anything about your mental health. That's not a good message. Okay. Then the second thing I see on all these sites is their campaigns to try to get people to normalize and move the conversation forward is stop the stigma, break the stigma, erase the stigma. Sports now has kick the stigma, slam the stigma, slap the stigma, strike out the stigma. Stigma's not formed by my phone because that's an inanimate object. It's not formed by this bracelet that I'm holding. It's an inanimate object. Stigma's formed by people. So if you have advocates saying, stop the stigma, that means you're pointing at another group of people saying, you're the issue for making unfair opinions and judgments about me and the people who are like me. That doesn't take a binary topic and bring us together. That pulls us further apart. And then
And I
all
think
the
for
way that
some of
this,
it,
yeah,
I think some of it too is that, like, I didn't recognize that there was a huge stigma, right? Like, I thought I was alone in it. I thought I
yeah,
was unique in it, but I didn't feel like there was this huge stigma. The only stigma I thought might exist is like, hey, I'm a man. Like,
right.
guys don't admit these things. It's a sign of weak. Like, maybe that's the thing that needs to be, kind of taken. But it's, it's the idea that I think in some of that messaging, we've created a stigma, right? And
Well,
it's,
that's, yeah,
I think
that's
counseling, I think all those conversations, doing groups, doing all, like, everybody should be doing that stuff. Not
right.
because everybody should be doing it because 99% of us probably have some, mental strength that needs to be built. Like you said, we need to go to the gym in some form of but because I just think it's good for all of us to have that outlet, to have that place, to have those conversations, to do that, to talk. And for me, it's not necessarily even one of those things where I go into it and I feel like, oh, like I don't like, sometimes it's going in and going like, I got a doctorate in education, I got 2 masters. I don't think I'm the smartest person in the world by any stretch of the imagination, but I've been going to counseling and therapy for long enough that I go in and sit there and I'm like, yeah, like you're gonna tell me the same thing that I've heard 50 times. The issue though is I can't get this to communicate with this. And
Yeah.
my body and my vagus nerve and all of that won't listen to what the cognitive part of my brain, like the rational part of my brain will tell me. And it gets overridden, like you said, right? Like, so then it's just that I'm just trying to survive moment instead. And that's what I love about the same here part is that it's just like, hey, all of us, man, like all of us together. Like it's
It,
us. And there's that
it's
spectrum.
it is on a continuum, right? Like spectrum continuum. And the fact that it's not all of us and that it's not common knowledge is ridiculous, but that has to be contrived because when you think that you're part of a group that has it versus not part of a group and you're fine, it's the perfect funnel system for selling a quick fix. Because if you put people into 2 categories, when you cross the line of having it, then immediately you go, how do I fix it? And then if these people don't have it, eventually they know the shit builds up, not they, the people, but they, the power that be, that builds up, and those people eventually get it. So it's literally the perfect system. There's
Yep.
and that message does, and then I see that message on all of these different websites and press releases, and I'm like, that can't be by accident. That that message which brings people into the funnel continues to be perpetuated,
Well,
right?
we're like, I mean, we look at it with all social media right now too, and this whole podcast, like the intent is community, right? Like to create less, but the reason that is because I don't believe we're made or that we're designed or that we're here to exist in isolation. And so they're using that same like we can talk about, you know, data never lies, statisticians do, right? But we can take that essence of like we're supposed to be here in community and we can play that however we want to, right? We can say, hey, it's me versus you, which is what I think our culture does a lot of in its basis, which is the lowest form of emotional intelligence. It's like me versus you. It's you have this, I don't have this. It's
Not
this
only
versus
that,
this, this versus this.
I'll take it a step further. Social media thrived off of creating two different sides because then you get
Yep.
emotional. I hate them, I love them. And in the mental health space, people are like, well, what do you mean? How are there sides if people love and hate? Here's how it happens. Because if you're taught to say stop the stigma, you believe the issue is the people who are being mean to you or the people who did this to you, right? How many times do we have to
Right.
see a social media post of Jim Carrey walking by with his head bopping to the side in Ace Ventura, and the top of the video says, "This is a video of me walking to therapy because my parents didn't go to therapy." Like, okay, so now we're gonna make it a blame game that it's your parents' fault that you feel the way that you do, even if they contributed to it. How is that helpful to the conversation other than for the social media companies and the influencer who puts that up there? They're now getting all these shares because that person who's struggling wants a reason to shoot across the bow at their parents. You're the issue. You did this to me, right?
Yeah,
And
and that's what
so
I talk about, oh, social media and phones and all that, like, we talk and I'm like, "Guys, like, I know we're talking about kids doing it, and they've got access and screens and the impact." Like, I did one on anxious generation and, with somebody, I'm like, "Hey, like, all that's true, but, like, we have to take some ownership as adults and parents too right now." Like, "Hey,
yes,
we're modeling and we're the examples of this." How often are we on our phones? How often are we on our social medias? And that's like, not again, not to top my own horn, but like it wasn't good for me emotionally to be on Facebook, Twitter, and it's like on all these different ones. So I have an Instagram for this podcast. I have an Instagram for some music that I make. I get on, I post stuff, I get off, and I have a LinkedIn. That's it. Like I don't get on other stuff. I have my Substack because for me, it's like my biggest insecurity is the comparison game. I don't feel like I'm
yes.
enough. I don't feel like I belong. I don't feel like and so when I get into those instances, I get on Instagram or I get onto those places and I'm like, well, why don't I have this? Why don't I have this? I'm a 38-year-old divorced guy living in a 2-bedroom townhouse with, who doesn't have his kids all the time, who, but I thought I did the things I was supposed to do. I've got student loans, I've got a doctor. Like I thought I did all the things I was supposed to do. Why am I in this? Well, who cares? Who cares why it is? I get to now choose what I do next, right? I get to choose now what that is as opposed to saying, like, who did this to me? Who did it? Like, my parents did the best they could. God love them. I'm doing the best I can for my kids. And so, like you said, it's that internal locus of control, right? It's that what are we doing to influence and impact rather than what are we allowing to influence and impact?
But these organizations, so social media is
For
one of
sure.
them. But then in the nonprofit space, if they are able, this group, I'm gonna not name the group, but there's many of them, they are able to say to the people who believe they're in the 1 in 5 alone, we got your back from all those other people who are mean to you or did this to you. Who's gonna get donated to? That group. So
Mhm.
there's this small-minded approach of we've got our collection of people that donate to us and that support us because we're showing them that we stick up for them, the marginalized people that are in this space that are mentally ill. And they don't like from a business perspective, if they pulled the band-aid off collectively, right? It would be hard to do it individually because then they're fearful that the other big player is going to take all of their, the money that's
Yeah.
coming into them from the people of their protection. But if they all got together and they all said, everyone's going through this, let's wrap our arms around different people dealing with it on different levels, guess what? Their donations would go through the roof because then it would be normalized that billions of people instead of tens of millions deal with this. And that's where they're
And it's
missing the boat.
it's the abundance mindset. which is the
Yep.
same here, right? That like it's not just some of us. It's not it's there's enough space at the table for all of us. And I think that's what we miss at times. And that's, I'm gonna kind of, I'm gonna kind of wrap us up. I wanted to make sure I
Yeah,
gave you
yeah.
space because your story is incredible, man. And
Thank you, dude.
like I know that there's gonna be people on here that hear, and I want to make sure that people know how to kind of connect with you outside of this. But one of the things that I love about staying here global, one of the things I love about the network of people that will be on this is that I have a deep belief that all of them have the same mindset I do, which is there's enough room at the table for all of us. There's enough space for all of us to do the same work. There are enough issues and enough stuff. None of us are a big enough company. None of us are big enough and have enough time on our own to support and help and do all the things that we need to do to support and help everybody. Right? Like one of my best friends, a guy named Dan Stecken, he's a superintendent, runs a conference called Stress Leaders for educators, for people who are kind of dying on the vine doing that. Right. Um, it's just one of those things that there's enough space on the table for both. There's enough space on the table for everybody to be able to do it because there's enough out there, like you said, that if we recognize that everybody deserves to have support, everybody's story deserves to be told, everybody deserves to be loved, cared for, have all those things, then it takes an army. And that army is probably a whole damn lot of us, not just one or two.
I
And
hope there's a business example that came to my mind as you were talking because I was, I listen to Pandora when I'm at the gym and I don't have the paid
yeah,
version,
yeah,
so I get the ads. And BetterHelp is advertising everywhere. BetterHelp is like the online therapy company. And I was surprised that they revealed their numbers because they think it gives them credibility. Don't get me wrong, a lot. Like any company would be happy to have this many customers. But they said, we've helped over 5 million people globally to get the therapy they need. And I'm thinking to myself, 5 million globally. There's 8 billion people globally. This is the largest company that has tons of money in the coffers to be able to promote, and they've only reached 5 million.
yeah,
That's the abundance mindset that we need to be thinking about. I remember being a little kid and being like, Coca-Cola, everybody knows Coca-Cola, so they can't be beaten. Well, no, there's Pepsi has their market share. And then there's RC Cola that has their market share. And then even outside of their market share, there's people who haven't tried cola yet that they can go after. And you have to look at the space of if you're in a helping space and look at those 8 billion people and go, I can help more and more people without competing with those other groups. And
yeah,
if you look at it that way, you never look at people competitors. Go, you pat them on the back. That's great that you're doing that at work. Ours is a little bit different. This is the niche that we come at it from. And if
yeah,
those people are willing to collaborate, you do things with them. If they're not, and they look at you like a competitor, fine. Then that's not someone that you work with. But
right.
as a society, we need to hold hands more on these things, and we're not doing it.
For sure. And I think there's also the idea too that we put this label that like someone has to have a specific college degree, specific training, specific stuff. But I'll tell you right now, one of the and she'll be on one of the later episodes, a lady named Debbie, who's one of my counselors, doesn't have a degree in counseling, but she has been one of the most impactful counselors I've ever had in in my time. Right now, I'm also on BetterHelp. I like BetterHelp. I like being able to schedule in and do. I have licensed counselor. Now I'm between like with a new job doing all stuff in between insurance. That's right. I want to try and figure out random stuff, but I enjoy that too. So it's one of those things you find out what works and then it really is that relationship with the people, like you said, right? It's the people who ask you the questions. It's the people who, because for me, talk therapy isn't necessarily what's always worked. It's been the people who've actually challenged me, the people who pushed me. It's the shadow work. It's the doing the forgiveness work. It's the people who, like, Debbie, when we essentially told me, like, you came in and you come in and talk about the same shit every week, but it doesn't seem like you do anything different. So either choose to do something different or let's start talking about something different. What are we going to do? And to me, it's just that laughable kind of thing where I go like, "Oh, okay. Thanks, Debbie." Like, so I love that, man. Hey, if, as we kind of wrap up, if people want to learn more about you, if they want to reach out to you or to hashtag same here, I'll put some links in some of the stuff as we kind of get this posted as well. But how could they reach out to you or to see what you're doing?
Yeah. So three things I would share is one is our website is samehereglobal.org. The for-profit version of that, if anyone wants to look into like the technology and stuff we have, is 5 in 5 Inc. Like literally 5 in 5. So the number 5, in5inc.com. Second is our social handles, which you see on my screen here. It's at @samehere_global. I'm most active on Instagram. Answer the DMs directly, so please shoot me away there. And then I just encourage people to download, because it's a free version of it, the Same Here Scale app. So there's no hashtag with it. It's just Same Here is one word and then scale. Because we need to have a common language of the continuum, and we need to have exercises to do in order to get ourselves back to the better place in the continuum. Like the amount of time and effort that's been put into that. I don't care what happens with AI and how we have to morph things. And that will be an app that, because I'm convinced for society to get better, we need common language and we need common exercises. And neither of those things are commonplace right now. So this will be what I'm pushing for the rest of my life, to make sure that we all get on the same page. There'll be nefarious actors out there that don't want it out there, but that's okay. That's the uphill battle I'll continue to fight.
Well, and I can say too, man, knowing you and you know, for the last few years, you know, I know that you are someone that if people reach out, that if they resonate with something, that they're not going to get blank space, that they're going to get connection back, and that's the whole intent of this. But hey, man, I can't, you know, we could do this for hours. I know we have before, so I sincerely appreciate you coming on and being able to share kind of where you're at and how you've gotten to where you are. You know, wishing the best of luck for, you know, as always, to Same Here Global and to everything you're doing with your work. And I know that it is work that's important, it's transformational work, that it impacts the lives of people. And we think about Pandora help 5 million people, and that's a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of the people globally to be helped. And I know that some of the people that are coming up on the podcast have some apps that are also do things to help support people. And you know, the best part is, again, how many people exist that are going to resonate or going to click somewhere with one of them, that it helps and it makes those turns, and it helps them feel a little less alone, helps them feel a little bit more like they belong, and helps them to live a life that, again, I think we all deserve to live, right? Which is one that is a life that is one that's fulfilling. Doesn't mean it's easy, but a life that's fulfilling, and a life that brings us joy and you know, brings us meaning and purpose. And man, I couldn't be prouder to continue to watch the stuff that you do, to call you a friend, have you in my network, and to be somebody I can reach out to. And I can't wait for everybody to hear your story and come back to it.
Thank you, man. Thanks for creating the space, and congrats on getting the launch. It's a labor of love, but it seems like it's something that you're psyched about, so I'm happy for you.
Yeah, it's a, you know, passion project for me, getting to listen to stories. There's stuff that even I wrote down, like as you were kind of talking and going through, and you know, but hey, I sincerely appreciate it. Looking forward to continued great things coming from you, and can't wait to see where everything goes. For everyone who joined this week, sincerely appreciate Eric and his time. Appreciate you spending this time with us. As always, this is that space where hopefully we can allow you to hear the stories of everyday people who share their everyday stories of grief, stories of love, stories of struggle, stories of the messy middle, the big leaps, the jumps, whatever they may be. But their stories, because they deserve space, they deserve the airwaves, in the goal of helping us feel a little bit less lonely and a little bit more like we all belong. I appreciate you joining us. Appreciate this time. I'm Joe Mulliken, and this is Life Mentored.